Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a review. Well, it actually could be an early impression video because I do not have a bottle, but you can see I have a 10 ml decant and I have put a hell of a dent in this. Have you ever had a fragrance that you wear and it's almost like you expect more, like you expect the fragrance to show you more? I've been waiting to do this review for a long time because I have been waiting and waiting and waiting when I wear this fragrance for it to kind of show itself, for it to, just kind of unfurl its beauty to me and reveal itself to me, and it never does. It's almost one of those disappointing fragrances to me when I wear. So this is going to be a short review, and you know what that means? Negative review. Well, not negative review in the sense that I'm going to bash this because it's not true. I think that this fragrance we're going to discuss today, which by the way, I guess I should tell you before I start my ramble, is from the house of MDCI, and this is called L'Elégant. Now, it came out in 2021, and the perfumer is a lady who doesn't get much talk or she actually hasn't done that much for many houses that I know at all. This is one of the only things she's done for a house I'm very familiar with. The perfumer's name is Irène Farmachidi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Irene. At least I think I got Irene right. But this is a 2021 release, so it's actually one of the newer fragrances from the house. And it's interesting because MDCI as a house, I think they did some really special things early on. Like, for example, in 2005 when Invasion Barbare came out, which I think is one of the most amazing lavender fragrances you can buy. I love Invasion Barbare. The smoothness of the lavender and the thyme, and it's just, I don't think I've ever smelled in texture a smoother fragrance than Invasion Barbare. It is class in a bottle. So you can see I've got a pretty good sized decant here. I think this is 20 mils. And so that was early on, and then 2005, and then in 2012, MDCI released the great Chypre Palatin, one of Bertrand Duchaufour's greatest creations. I've got a tester, so the notes are on the back, but I will review this one of these days as well. And I really do think this and this are two of the best things from the house. And this is an interesting situation because the two that are most talked about from the house, I think, are two of the better ones from the house that I've smelled. So some of the other things I've smelled, I'm not as excited with. And there are some others that I plan on talking about soon. Ombre Tepeki is okay. I've got a sample of that. But this in particular, L'Elégant, I think is a little bit of a disappointment. Not that it's a bad fragrance. Again, I'm not going to come on here and just absolutely destroy it. I'm not going to shred it to bits, okay? But what I will say is if you asked me to kind of sum this up in a blurb, I would say the Ram is not impressed. I'm just not impressed with the whole overall, thing, just the whole composition, okay? So, like I said, I don't hate it, but I expect more from a niche house, especially when, I think this is $250 or something. I can't remember exactly, but I'll read you the notes in the blurb and all that stuff. So this is the blurb, which MDCI gives you like one sentence, so I wish they did a little bit more on the blurb, but it says, Irène Farmachidi's interpretation of the beautiful portrait of the elegant Mr. Cerizat, or Cerizat. I'm sorry, my French speakers are probably bleeding from the ears somewhere, but yes, Cerizat, I believe is how you pronounce it, is a prowess of sensitivity and refinement. Sensitivity. I don't know if that's a word I want used with my masculine perfume, but there it is. That's a good descriptor of the fragrance, actually, sensitive. It captures the sitter's most dandy elegance while going deeper than appearances to touch his very soul. Her composition is a complex, I disagree, masterful, I disagree, perfectly balanced, disagree, and unexpectedly ambiguous, I agree with that, very ambiguous, blend of musks, wood, spices, and ambers. So the note listing according to MDCI is incense, saffron, cardamom, and black pepper in the top with a heart of iris, honey, cinnamon, nutmeg, cumin, divana, sandalwood with a base of musks, tonka bean, labdanum, cistus, oud notes, and cashmeran. Oud notes. So we have to talk a little bit about kind of the backstory, but again, if I was going to spend my hard-earned money on a bottle of an MDCI fragrance, I would probably go for a full bottle of Invasion Barbare. This is why, just real quick, a quick ramble. This is why decants can be so such a useful tool to a fragrance collector and a hobbyist and someone who has the disease and the sickness that I have, that we kind of want to smell everything, you know. Samples and decants are one of your greatest weapons. Do not This is my advice to the newbies, or to somebody who is, let's say, newer in the game. If you're newer and you have 10 to 20 bottles or something, don't take that 10 to 20 to 200 in a year. Don't do it. Do not just go start buying everything. Trust me, you will not be happy with your collection. And then you'll have to pivot and sell stuff, and it's a hassle and all this stuff, right? So what I would recommend is try and get decants like this. So especially if money is even remotely an issue for you, which 99.99999% of the population, money is an issue, especially nowadays with how expensive everything is. Every Costco run I go to, it feels like $700. And so for most of the population, where you kind of have to, you can't just go buy everything unless you're the ultra rich, right? You have to pick and choose where your dollars go. Decants, I think, are so important. So the scent is part of MDCI's Painters and Perfumers collection. If you heard me try to pronounce the poor guy's name, I'll talk a little bit about it, but it's basically a 17. So the picture on the front of the bottle is a picture of the painting. It's a famous painting, apparently. I love art, but I don't know some details like this. I'm not that detailed. I can tell you the artist and the painting and all that stuff. But it's a very famous oil canvas painting by the French artist Jacques-Louis David, apparently. And if you know your Napoleonic history, you may know that name. We'll talk a little bit about why maybe later on. And so the portrait is of a bourgeoisie Frenchman of the aristocratic class, let's say. And his name is Pierre Ciriziat. Ciriziat. Sorry, that's as close as it's going to get as a Texan accent. You just got to live with it. So the painting is maybe the coolest part of the fragrance, actually, to me, because, and by the way, I've got a 20-minute dry down here. I wore this as my scent of the day this week. You can see I put a hell of a dent in this decant, so I have pretty good amounts of experience with this fragrance. The painting is amazing. It's basically Jacques-Louis David painting this aristocrat. And if you look at him, he is almost like he's sitting with a top hat on and his kind of curly wig and this very late 1790s style, you know, with the crinkle in the shirt here, and he's got his riding crop underneath his arm. It's actually a really cool painting. I would urge you to look it up. I'd urge you to look it up and see. He's wearing like a black, almost like a dinner jacket, but his pants are tan. Even though it doesn't look like he's wearing pants, I assure you he is wearing pants. And the painting apparently was a big deal because it was like a plea to the commoners, to the average Frenchman, for French unity. You have to remember, in France, in the 1790s, there was a huge amount of bloodshed. They basically called it the White Terror because the guillotine came out. They were cutting people's heads off left and right. I mean, literally, they would throw people in jail, and there would be, you know, if it was like an enemy of yours, that's how they would deal with it. They would say, oh, they're part of the Jacobins, or the mob, you know, he committed some crime or whatever it is. Even if they were in the military sometimes. Even Napoleon found himself thrown in jail. He almost could have had his head cut off as well before he became Napoleon. But so this painting was supposed to be almost like a plea for unity after all this horrible bloodshed, okay? And so if you glance quickly at the painting, like I said, especially on the MDCI bottle from far away, it looks like you're seeing this fine, noble Frenchman wearing no pants, which I think would be a hilarious way to paint a member of the bourgeoisie. Someone should do that, by the way. But I promise you, he is wearing pants. It's just a very tan, skin-colored pants that he's wearing. But that's the painting. He's kind of sitting on this rock. He's got the riding crop under his arm. He's obviously an aristocrat with the top hat and all that good stuff, right? This painting gives you an idea of what Irene, the perfumer, was going for whenever she created this fragrance, okay? So to me, this fragrance starts out like a niche version of I don't want to say generic, but I want to say a tried and true spicy, woody-like scent. You know, for example, if you smelled spicy, woody fragrances like Déclaration, for example, this is just an example of a designer that's 1/20th of the price. God knows, you know, the price difference. But if you've smelled some of these woody fragrances like Déclaration, and this is almost, to me, like a niche version of that, let's say. There's a lot of what I would call modern woody chemical aromas floating around in here, which doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing because there are some modern, what I have called Western style oud. There is oud in here as well, according to Parfumo, and I think also in the note listing I read. So there is oud in here. And so you're getting this kind of modern aroma, sandalwood slash, and I don't know what sandalwood aroma that they use. Some sandalwood aromas are quite good. Javanol is nice and all, but there are others that are just rip your kind of nose out from the inside, harsh. And so there's definitely this, let's just call it a mix up of a bunch of different modern aroma woody chemicals that you're going to get in the beginning, okay? And the opening is my favorite part. So let me clarify my position on that. I like the first hour of this fragrance. Actually, the first hour is the strongest part of the fragrance, and maybe that's why I just kept respraying and respraying when I would wear this. But honestly, when you look at the composition as a whole, I'm not the biggest fan of this. I really think MDCI could have done much better. They could have taken more chances. This is a very, from like being extra daring, like look at Mitzman all the way over here. On this side of the aisle, this is extra daring and this is extra safe. This plays it extremely safe to me. This is a very conservative type release. You know, this is one of those releases where, you know, I really feel like they're playing the odds, if you will. And that shouldn't be like that in a niche fragrance. So like I said, the first hour I really like, but for $250, I think is 75 mils is what I think the MDCI bottles are. Yeah, 75 mils are what their bottles are. So $250 for 75 mils is a little disappointing, okay, for me. I really don't think value for money here holds up very well. And that is important. I think value for money is something you have to talk about. Some people say, oh, you can't talk about price, you have to leave it out. You have to talk about price. Everything is relative value for money, in my opinion. And so price just has to be something that's discussed. Now, whether $250 to you is a lot or not a lot is up to your personal situation. I got a speeding ticket today, and that's going to be about 250 bucks. But you know, everyone's $250, whether you're dropping 250 bucks, everyone's different. Their salary is different. Your situation is different. You know, if you're retired on a fixed income, it's different from a college kid, all that stuff, right? So how much you can personally spend is subjective. Price is subjective in that sense, but you can't just completely write it off. I mean, you can't say, well, we're going to talk about Roja's Haut Luxe, it's 3,500 bucks, and not talk about the $3,500 price tag. You can't do it. So I just expect more from this is where I'm going with this. And my hypotheses, one of the biggest shortcomings with this fragrance is longevity. So the first hour is very good. The first 20 to 30 minutes is actually the best when you first spray. And already 30 minutes in or so, and it becomes nondescript, you know. And I think that they really used an absolute shit ton, a metric ton of ISO-E Super is my guess. That's my hypothesis. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm guessing there's a lot of ISO-E Super in here that is playing this dual role of filling that woody, chemical-y aroma that I'm smelling, and also making me quite anosmic to the scent. And I mean, sometimes anosmic to the point where I feel like 3, 4, 5 hours in, it's done. You know, like I'm ready to reapply. It is very, very soft, which I must admit, for a man who wears perfume for himself and not for others. If others smell me, that's just an added bonus, is the way I view it. And if you don't like it, then get the hell out of my airspace. But for me, you know, I wear fragrances for myself. So when I can't smell a fragrance and enjoy it, you know, I'm wearing Acteur by Azzaro today as my scent of the day. I applied this at 7:20 a.m. It is 8:30 p.m. I swear to God, I can still smell this. You know, we are talking in half a day, more than half a day, more than 12 hours, and 13 hours, and I can still smell this. And I think I paid 20 bucks for this 25 ml bottle. So we'll talk a little bit about more of kind of value for money later on. But I think it's the ISO-E Super that makes me quite anosmic to the scent. I get very similar anosmic feeling to things like Terre Hermes and stuff like that. So I think ISO-E sometimes just makes me very anosmic. Maybe other people can still smell me, but I don't like it when it just seems like a very expensive niche fragrance disappears after 3 or 4 or 5 hours. So, and like I said, I try to be very neutral and document both kind of my honest feelings on these reviews And it's very hard because on the one hand, I really feel like when you get something and you're amazed by it, you're so impressed by it, and your passion really about the fragrance starts to flow, that kind of thing. Those fragrance reviews are the easiest to do, and also the ones that, you absolutely despise. It's so easy for me to bash on a Prin fragrance that I think smells like an old dog turd, You're bashing a fragrance, you adamantly hate it, or you adamantly like it. I think these fragrance reviews that are kind of in the middle, where I'm just like, I mean, it's not shit. Okay, I'll tell you that. I don't think it's a shit fragrance, but I think that it is uninspiring and I'm not impressed by it, right? So it's kind of in that feeling, which sometimes that's just how fragrances are. There's nothing wrong with that. You have to give your impartial feeling. But it's very hard to put your personal tastes aside and play Switzerland and do the middle of the road thing, right? But that being said, one thing that I have to give this fragrance credit for is there's not any of this modern bubblegum sweetness. So obviously they're playing the oud card a little bit here, right? So they're trying to go down that oud road, although I don't think this is I hope they have a better oud fragrance than this. But that bubblegum sweetness that has become so prevalent in modern perfume, especially in men's fragrances, which is a disgrace. And you guys may not know this, but I believe it's ethyl maltol. One of the reasons it's called bubblegum sweetness, one of the reasons people call that is I heard somewhere that that's literally what they use to sweeten bubblegum. So that's kind of where it comes from. Makes sense, right? So I guess if just not having bubblegum sweetness in a fragrance nowadays makes a composition a niche fragrance, then, I guess you could just call this a niche fragrance because of that. But other than that, to me, there's nothing in this composition that makes me feel like it's niche worthy. There's no big major transitions that are impressive. The quality of the ingredients is actually not very impressive to me. I don't know where the high price tag is coming from. I know it's a niche house and that's just the way it is, but I honestly think there's so many other woody designer type scents for 10, 20 times less than this that you could buy that for me would scratch the exact same itch. I just use Declaration as an example. This is a Jean-Claude Elena. I get more joy out of wearing something like this than I would L'Elégant, right? So, but objectively speaking, that lack of a sweetness is nice. I like how the fragrance starts off very dry, very woody, and what ends up happening is you kind of get the tiniest touch of iris, which I actually pick up strongest in like the first 10 to 30 seconds, okay? The first 10 to 30 seconds of the fragrance, sometimes it feels like all of these notes are kind of trying to like find their space in the fragrance. They're trying to find their seats, okay? And find their places. And so in that first 30 seconds or so, you can almost pick up the tiniest hit of this slightly powdery iris that starts to come through, mixing with the woods. That's probably the most beautiful part of the fragrance because everything is just kind of coming together, trying to find their seats, trying to fight for space a little bit inside of the fragrance. And but for me, when it opens up, the focus is very singular. The focus is on dry woods and spices. Okay, those are the two main things. So the spices I mentioned in the blurb, you have some black pepper, cardamom, and cumin. Okay, and for me, if you are not a fan of cumin, let's say, the opening of this may put you off slightly. So think of a toned down use of cumin. Everything in this fragrance is used ever so gently and slightly used, okay? So when I say there's a little bit of cumin in here in the top, I don't want you to think about Fate Man, which I think it's right here. Yeah, it's right there. I'll review Fate Man very soon by Mouchoir. That is like the cumin bomb to end all cumin bombs. It is a huge cumin fragrance. Some say it smells like a Indian restaurant in the beginning. It's a big, sweaty, animalic cumin, and I love it, actually. I've come to love Fate Man. But, the cumin in the first 10 to 15 minutes may be a little tough if you're someone who thinks or smells cumin as turning to sweat on your skin. Then you may not like it. I actually like the way that the cumin hits. It's done pretty elegantly, and the cardamom almost acts like a cooling, translucent spice and just allows the cumin to kind of shine a little bit without being too much, if that makes sense. So it really feels like the two play off of each other. They both grind the axe a little bit, but the cumin is not overwhelming. So I will say that if you get cumin in the first 10 to 15 minutes like I do, calm down a little bit and let it dry down a little bit and just kind of see what it turns into 15 to 30 minutes in. You will kind of see you'll see the cumin start to recede. Okay, so that cumin hit is really the heaviest to my nose in the opening. The spices hit heaviest in the opening. And here I am, 30 minutes in, let's say, since I applied this. I applied it about 10 minutes or so before I hit play on the video. And I can still pick up ever the tiniest bit of cumin, but now it just smells like a spicy, woody fragrance that actually, I hate to say it, smells quite generic. That's one of the problems I have with this scent is, like I said in the beginning, one of the reasons I kept testing it, and I didn't do a video here or here or here, is because I kept wanting this fragrance to kind of show me something. And that's the thing. It just kind of turns into this fragrance that I think is good, but it leaves me wanting, dry, spicy, woody fragrances that don't have too much to kind of separate themselves. I just feel like there almost should be a next act. Like this fragrance was created as like an amazing sort of first act and opening, but then it should do something else and it doesn't. It's like an unfinished piece of work, if that makes sense. And I just don't think that's good enough for a niche fragrance for $250. That's my personal opinion. So it leaves me wanting, okay? It leaves me wanting the next act. And so if you want kind of the 30,000 foot overview, I would say that dry, woody, spicy bit that dries down to this very generic smelling, nondescript, musky dry down is basically what ends up happening. Nondescript is a good word. The dry down is like shrouded in this cashmeran-like feel, okay? So I reviewed a fragrance from the House of Frederick Malle called Dante Bras. Dante Bras, there's a review on the channel. You can check it out. I would love a bottle of Dante Bras one day. I really think that is like the ultimate cashmeran fragrance. Like when you say cashmeran, Dante Bras is like the reference cashmeran for me. And I could easily go for a bottle one day if I could find like a pre-Estee Lauder bottle at a fair price, which I know is asking a lot nowadays, but that is what it is. I'm a patient man. And, the word that I would use in repetition when describing how this fragrance dries down is slightly. The woods turn from being quite prominent in the first 30 minutes or so. Let's say the first hour or so, you really get a lot of the woods, and then they just turn slight. They turn light. And it's the same thing for this. So the slightly, think about a fragrance that smells slightly woody, slightly spicy. They keep using the term dandy in their marketing. For me, dandy was referred to as fragrances like Mouchoir de Monsieur was referred to as dandy, but I would wear this a million times over L'Elégant, although I kept wearing this because I was trying to break this down for you guys. But and then slightly musky into the dry down. And so in a nutshell, I hate to say it, but it becomes boring. Could it be a good office scent or something? Sure, because it's not, I don't think this would offend anyone necessarily by the time you get to the office after putting it on. Maybe the most offensive part of the fragrance, that sweaty cumin, slightly cuminy opening goes away. But the thing is I buy niche because I want to smell something amazing. I want to smell something unique. I want to smell something that I've never smelled before. When I smell niche like this, which I would almost call like a designer in a niche bottle or high-end designer in a niche bottle, just doesn't impress me. I want more. It's almost like the same issue that I have with Christopher Chong, the Fishman. When Amouage went from Christopher Chong to the Fishman, to Reynolds Salmon, and he started to take the house away from that artistic direction and started to take it towards the more designer side of things. Go watch my Boundless review by Amouage if you want kind of a in-depth breakdown on a perfect example of that. So I guess if you really said, Ramsey, the thing you like about the most about MDCI's L'Elégant is, I would probably say the biggest twist this fragrance has is there is this, and again, I'm going to use the word slightly or soft. There is this ever so slightly soft hit of incense, okay? They say frankincense. It feels like a, Imagine like burning the end of a piece of wood, you know? Like you take a piece of wood and you burn the end of it. I did this briefly when I reviewed that Celine fragrance a week or two ago, which had a Palo Santo note in it. I actually have a piece of Palo Santo wood, and I burn the end of it, and the end gives off the tiniest, wisp of incense. You blow it out, and then it starts, just going out, basically. But think of ever so soft and slight incensey wisps coming off the end of a sandalwood stick or an oud stick. And maybe the oud used here, which I don't think MDCI is claiming they use real oud. I don't know. If they claim they do, then believe whatever they say. The brand would not lie about that. How much? Who knows? But my guess is this is a oud accord that was created. Maybe that's where my sense of this fragrance feels synthetic, not just in the ISOE super cedary thing, sandalwood cedar thing, but also it feels synthetic in the oud composition. She did not do a very good job building this oud accord, in my opinion. And it leaves me feeling you're wearing something synthetic and pretty unimpressed, actually. So I don't see, and there's almost no reviews of this in English, by the way. There is a reviewer, I think he did a review of this in Spanish, but he talked about almost 100% the opposite of what I said. So he was like, oh, this fragrance is so detailed, and you can really pick up all of the amazing details. And I'm like, details? What? I can't smell any details in here. It just smells like a generic, boring, spicy, woody thing. So I'm in camp generic, boring, spicy, woody thing, as you can smell, as you can see, as I can smell. And if you've smelled it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I am unimpressed, and maybe my standards are just too high nowadays. I mean, I talked a little bit about my scent of the day, but I'll review this. This is one of the greatest masculine rose fragrances of all time, Azzaro Acteur. It just so happens it was my scent of the day, but I bring it up because you can buy 100 mils of this for $100, so it's $1 per mil still on eBay. There's even a 200 mil I saw for like $140. Value for money is outrageous there. Even with all the vintage prices going through the roof, you can still find stuff like this for a great deal. And this is just so much better to me. I mean, this type of perfumery, the vintage perfume like this, if you can still get it at a relatively good value, insane value for money. When niche is charging what they're charging, I mean, it just is what it is. So that's how I feel. And I know me complaining about it is not going to change anything, but that's really why my heart is with vintage all the time. And I do these reviews on the channel because I want to review the newer stuff as well, but I have to be honest. I have to give you my honest feelings about it, and that's unfortunately what it is. This is just kind of one of those middle of the road type fragrances. I would almost expect and demand more from the house of MDCI. Now, that being said, Ombre Tepeki is better, and Invasion Barbare and Chypre Palatin are better still. So there will be more MDCI reviews. As of now, none of them will be as drab as this. I think this is the most boring MDCI fragrance I've ever smelled. Just one Ram's opinion. It has all the ingredients. What's funny is if I looked at this, the reason I got this decant was because of the note listing. I saw iris, honey, cumin, Divana, which Divana is supposed to give this sort of warm, exotic, slightly spicy, ripe fruit type thing, which I don't get very much of that at all. Definitely no ripe fruit. Maybe the warm, exotic, slightly spicy part, but that's pretty much it. And I saw Cistus labdanum. The labdanum here is not the heavy labdanum you would expect from like Sahara Noir or the Zoo Everlasting, which I've reviewed both of those on the channel. Nothing like that, and the oud note was disappointing. The labdanum and the cistus were just, I feel like they needed to be more. They needed to be heavier. That cashmeran thing kind of just takes over, that generic musky type dry down. And the frankincense is very nondescript and almost shy in a sense. It's like you get the tiniest wisp. Like the wood, you just put the match up to the wood and it just barely sizzled. The tiniest bit, that's your frankincense. And that's the way it wears. And so for the office, could this work? This could be a great office fragrance. Maybe what I'm thinking is ISOE will make people around you smell you more than the way I'm portraying this, but I think this is a very, very soft, very subtle and gentle and shy fragrance. You know, those are all words that you can compare, and everything is done slightly. The slightly woody, the slightly incensey, the slightly spicy, you know, and that's why for me, the first 30 minutes are the best part of this fragrance. And then I'm just, as the hours go by and it starts becoming more and more nondescript, I just want to reapply. So I know this is not the type of review people get all up in arms about, but it is a necessary review, especially if I want my channel to be a little bit of an encyclopedia where people can go and see my thoughts on all these different fragrances. These type of reviews are going to happen. So, but as always, I appreciate everyone joining, watching, commenting. Love to hear your feedback. If you have experience with this house, or in particular with L'Elégant, I'd love to hear your thoughts. There will be more MDCI reviews to come. So as always, cheers guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.